Imagine you're flying over the ocean, and the water below looks normal. Calm. Endless. But beneath that calm surface, the seafloor is full of mountains, trenches, and secrets that humans have never seen. For decades, scientists believed we already knew the major features of Earth. But the truth is, we've mapped the surface of Mars better than we've mapped the bottom of our own oceans. And that is exactly why underwater discoveries still happen, discoveries so strange, they force experts to stop and ask, how did this get here? In the last few years, deep-sea scanning technology has improved dramatically. Scientists use sonar mapping, underwater drones, and remote-controlled robots, called ROVs, to explore the seabed. One day, during a routine scan, something unusual appeared on the screen. Not a rock formation. Not a shipwreck. But something that looked like structures. Lines. Angles. Shapes that looked too organized to be random. At first, the team assumed it was an error. Maybe the sonar was reflecting off unusual rocks. So they scanned again. Same result. And then they sent down a drone. What the camera saw was disturbing. It looked like a city. A large area with what seemed like stone walls, long straight paths, raised platforms, and formations that resembled buildings. This wasn't just one object. It was a whole site. And suddenly, a terrifying thought entered the minds of researchers. What if this isn't natural? When the first video clips were released, the internet exploded. People started saying, Atlantis is real. This proves ancient super-civilizations. Governments are hiding the truth. But scientists were cautious. Because underwater discoveries are tricky. The ocean distorts everything. A natural rock can look like a wall. A broken ridge can look like a staircase. But still, something about this site felt different. The shapes had patterns. And patterns are dangerous. Because human brains are trained to recognize patterns, even when none exist. So scientists did what they always do. They measured. They analyzed. They compared the structures with known natural formations like basalt columns, underwater ridges, coral formations, tectonic fractures. But the more they studied it, the stranger it became. The structures appeared to have repeated symmetry, aligned directions, and consistent spacing. Those are not common features of random geology. Then came the biggest clue. The area looked like it had been built on land, and later submerged. And that one idea changed everything. Because if this place was once above sea level, then it means the ocean swallowed it. Here's the shocking truth. Cities can sink. Not in one dramatic movie-style moment, but slowly, over centuries, through rising sea levels. Around 12,000 years ago, Earth was coming out of the last ice age. Huge glaciers melted. And as they melted, sea levels rose by more than 120 meters in total. That's enough to drown entire coastlines. That means many ancient human settlements built near water could now be underwater. And scientists already know this is true. Because underwater archaeology has already found submerged villages, ancient stone tools, and even sunken temples. But a whole mystery city? That would be next level. If this site is real, and if it was man-made, then it means humans built complex structures far earlier than we officially believe. And that's where the real controversy begins. Because mainstream history says agriculture began around 10,000 years ago. Permanent cities appeared later. And large stone structures came after that. But what if this underwater city is older? What if the timeline is wrong? And what if the sea is hiding entire chapters of human history? This is where our story truly begins. Because now the question is not, did we find a city? The question is, who built it, and why is it under the sea? Now, before we go further, we need to be honest. This is not the first time people have claimed an underwater city was found. In fact, there are several real-world sites that look exactly like a lost city under the sea. And some of them are genuinely ancient. One of the most famous is Yonaguni Monument in Japan. It's a massive underwater rock formation with flat terraces, sharp edges, step-like shapes, and long straight lines. When divers first filmed it, people were stunned. Some experts said, "This is a natural rock formation." But others said, "No, this looks carved." To this day, Yonaguni remains controversial. Then there's the Gulf of Cambay in India. In the early 2000s, sonar scans detected what appeared to be large structures underwater. Some reports suggested it could be 9,000 years old or even older. That claim shook the world. Because if true, it would mean large settlements existed long before we thought possible. But critics argued the dating was uncertain. Objects could have drifted. And the structures might be natural. Still, the debate never died. And then there's Dwarka, also in India, an underwater site linked to ancient Hindu texts. Divers have found submerged walls and stone blocks. Most archaeologists agree. Some of it is real and ancient, though the legends around it are much bigger than the evidence. And in Egypt, underwater archaeology discovered real submerged ruins in Heracleion, near Alexandria. This is one of the most important examples because it proves one thing. Yes, entire cities can sink and disappear underwater. Heracleion was not a myth. It was a real port city, swallowed by the sea due to earthquakes and ground collapse. So now the mystery becomes sharper. If cities have sunk before, then it's possible more exist. But not all of them will be obvious. Here's something most people don't realize. The most important ancient human settlements were almost always built near water. Because water means food, transport, farming, and survival. So the coastlines of the past were the centers of early civilization. But those coastlines are not the same today. After the Ice Age, sea levels rose dramatically. And when sea levels rise, coastlines move inward. Entire ancient shorelines are now deep underwater. This means the ocean floor is like a hidden museum. And it's not just one or two places. It could be thousands. Now add earthquakes, tsunamis, and tectonic movement. A city can disappear in multiple ways. Sea level rise slowly drowning it. Earthquakes collapsing the land. Tsunamis destroying it. Soil liquefaction making the ground sink. Volcanic activity reshaping the seabed. And once a city is underwater, nature begins to erase it. Coral grows on it. Sand buries it. Marine life covers it. Within a few hundred years, even a real city can look like a natural rock field. That's why discovering an underwater city is not easy. Even if it's right there. Now let's talk like real investigators. If someone claims, "We found a city under the sea," there are only a few things that can prove it. And there are also many things that do not prove it. Here's what does not prove it. Straight lines in sonar. Shapes that look like stairs. Walls seen in blurry video. Random stones stacked by nature. Internet rumors and viral posts. Because nature can create incredible illusions. But here's what does matter. Tool marks on stone. Cut blocks with consistent sizes. Artifacts like pottery, tools, ornaments. Human remains. Inscriptions or symbols. And most importantly, reliable dating. Dating is everything. Because if the site is 2,000 years old, it's still fascinating, but it doesn't rewrite history. But if it's 10,000 years old, then it becomes explosive. Because it would mean civilization developed earlier than we officially believe. And that is why underwater discoveries become so controversial. Not because scientists are hiding the truth, but because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And now, in part 3, we reach the most exciting part of this story. The moment researchers begin testing the site seriously. And the evidence starts pointing in a direction nobody expected. After the first scans and videos, the research team did what every serious scientist must do. They stopped guessing. Because guessing is what creates myths. Instead, they began a full investigation using 3 methods. 1. High-resolution sonar mapping. This creates a detailed 3D map of the seabed. 2. ROV close-up imaging. Underwater robots record stable video and take thousands of photos. 3. Sample collection. They collect rock samples, sediment, and anything that could be an artifact. And here's what surprised the team. The city didn't look like a single random formation. It looked like a connected area, like something planned. Some sections appeared like a long straight pathway, a raised platform like a foundation, and several blocks arranged in rows. Even more strange, the site was positioned in a way that resembled coastal settlements, meaning it looked like it was once close to the shoreline. And that matters, because humans don't build cities in the middle of nowhere. They build them near water sources, trade routes, safe land, and natural harbors. So the team asked a very direct question. If this is natural, why does it resemble human planning? Now, we need to be fair. Nature can produce unbelievably architectural shapes. For example, basalt columns. When lava cools, it can form polygon-like columns that look carved. Tectonic fractures. Earthquakes can split rock into straight lines. Underwater erosion. Water currents can carve terraces and flat surfaces. Sand burial. Sand can fill gaps and make structures look more finished. This is why many experts argue that sites like Yonaguni are natural. Because the ocean is a master sculptor. But in this case, there was a detail that made some scientists uneasy. The site showed repeated angles and alignment. Not just 1 or 2, but many. And in geology, repeated alignment can happen. But it's not common across a wide area. Then came the next test. They examined the rocks under magnification. They were looking for one thing: tool marks. Marks made by cutting, shaping, or polishing stone. Because if tool marks exist, the argument changes instantly. And what they found was controversial. Some researchers reported scratches and grooves that looked artificial. Others argued they could be natural cracks. And now the investigation entered its most dangerous stage. The stage where science meets belief. Because once people start wanting something to be true, even evidence becomes a battlefield. Then the team noticed something else. And this is the part that most people don't talk about. Around the structures, there was a layer of sediment. And the sediment pattern suggested something shocking. The site may have been exposed to air in the past. How can sediment show that? Because underwater, sediment settles differently. But if a structure was once above water, you may find old soil layers, signs of wind erosion, or surface weathering patterns. And some parts of the site look like they had once been weathered by air. If that is true, then this place was not always underwater. Meaning it existed during a time when sea levels were lower. And that leads us to the biggest historical question. How far back are we talking? Because if sea levels rose after the last ice age, then this city could be thousands of years older than most civilizations. And now, the story becomes terrifying. Because if a settlement existed there before the sea rose, then where are the people? Where are their tools? Where is their pottery? Where is their culture? If this was a real city, there should be human evidence. And if there is no evidence, then it may not be a city at all. It may be a natural structure that looks human. So the researchers prepared the final stage of investigation. They searched for artifacts. And what they found, or what they did not find, became the turning point. At this stage, the mystery reached a point where only one thing could settle it. Not sonar. Not shapes. Not viral videos. Only artifacts. Because a real city leaves behind a signature. Even if buildings collapse, humans leave. Pottery fragments. Carved stones. Tools. Jewelry. Bones. Ash layers. Food remains. And cultural objects. So the team began searching the site carefully. They used underwater suction devices to lift sediment. They scanned cracks and corners. They looked under flat slabs. They checked areas that could have been rooms. And here's the reality that disappointed many people. Clear, undeniable human artifacts were not found. No pottery field. No carved writing. No skeletons. No obvious tools. This doesn't automatically prove it is not man-made. Because artifacts can be buried deep. But it does mean something very important. If this was a city, it was either extremely ancient and heavily erased, or not a city at all. And now, most serious experts lean toward the same conclusion. The structures are most likely natural geology, shaped in a way that fools the human brain. But the story still didn't end there. Because even if it's natural, the ocean was still hiding something powerful. Here's the psychological truth. Humans love lost cities. Not because we're foolish, but because lost cities represent something emotional. The fear that history is incomplete. The idea that civilization could rise, become advanced, and then vanish. That idea hits a deep nerve. And Atlantis is the biggest symbol of that feeling. But when you look closely, Atlantis is not a proven historical place. It comes mainly from Plato's writings. And Plato may have used it as a moral story, a political warning, or an exaggerated legend based on real disasters. The problem is, once the word Atlantis enters the story, people stop thinking scientifically. They start thinking like a movie. And the internet makes it worse. A blurry underwater rock becomes an ancient temple. A ridge becomes a collapsed pyramid. A crack becomes a street. This doesn't mean mysteries are fake. It means the ocean is the perfect place for imagination. Because it is dark, unknown, and mostly unexplored. So every unusual shape becomes a possible secret. So what is the most reality-based conclusion? Here it is. This mystery city is most likely a natural formation. But it exists in a part of the ocean that may once have been near ancient coastlines. And that is the bigger story. Because even if this specific site is natural, there absolutely are real human settlements underwater. And archaeologists have already confirmed many. And as technology improves, we will discover more. In the next 20 years, underwater archaeology may reveal submerged villages from the Ice Age, trade ports swallowed by earthquakes, and coastal civilizations erased by rising seas. So the final truth is not disappointing. It is actually more thrilling. Because it means this. The ocean is not just water. It is a library of human history. And we have only opened the first page. So the next time you hear about a lost city under the sea, don't ask, is this Atlantis? Ask the smarter question. What part of human history is still missing, and could the ocean be hiding it?
Subscribe Info Beyond Borders now for more mind-blowing knowledge.